What does it mean to be elegantly disowned by your own family? Not a phone call, not a dramatic argument, just an email. No greeting, no sign-off. Subject line blank. Message: Vanessa, to keep Christmas warm and light this year, I think it's better you don't come home. That was it. It read like a weather update. Calm, detached, final. My mother didn't yell, she didn't argue, she just deleted me from the holiday, like I was a misplaced ornament on the family tree. I told myself maybe the party really was smaller this year. Maybe Mom was telling the truth. But then I saw it. On Savannah's Instagram story, 12 chairs perfectly arranged around a candlelit table, 12 wine glasses, 12 matching plates, not 11, not 10, 12, just enough for everyone in the family, except me. My name wasn't missing by accident. It was erased on purpose. And no one said a word, not even my brother Bradley. They celebrated as if I'd never existed. I stared at the screen while the photo faded, replaced by another image. Laughing, toasting, wearing matching pajamas like a damned catalog shoot. And I realized I wasn't just forgotten. I was uninvited from my own bloodline. I sat by the window with a glass of cheap red wine and a single box wrapped in gold paper. It was for my niece. I bought it months ago when I still believed I'd be welcome. Now it just sat under the tree, alone, like me. I didn't cry, not this year. I had already cried through too many Decembers. This one just froze me. I watched the snow fall slow and quiet, like the kind of silence that doesn't comfort you. It suffocates. Not all silence is peaceful. Some silence kills you, especially when it comes from the people who once promised to love you forever. My Christmas wasn't ruined by a fight. It was ruined by the sound of nothing. My phone rang at 10:07 a.m. while I was still in my flannel pajamas, reheating day-old coffee in the microwave. The number was unfamiliar. Washington, D.C. area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. Hello? Is this Vanessa Concaid? The voice was warm, calm, professional. Yes, speaking, I said slowly, bracing for a scam or survey. This is Elijah Muir, Special Coordinator from the Office of Public Engagement at the White House. I blinked. I think you may have the wrong number, I said, half laughing. Actually, I don't, he replied. President Ramirez would like to invite you to a private unity dinner on Christmas Eve. My hand tightened around the phone. I looked around my tiny apartment like a camera crew might jump out and yell, "Gotcha!" I'm sorry, what? 5 years ago, he said gently, you helped stop a deportation in Matamoros, a little boy named Luis. You used your Spanish, your courage, and a call you technically weren't authorized to make. Suddenly I remembered. The van, the crying, the folder in my hand shaking like a leaf. That moment, I thought I was about to get fired, but instead saved a life. I stood very still, and for the first time in weeks, I felt seen. I sat on the edge of my bed, the call still echoing in my ears. The White House, the president, me, Louis, I whispered. That little boy with wide brown eyes and no papers. I had shielded him from a van marked with no logo. Just me, a flimsy folder, and enough Spanish to scream legal codes into chaos. I hadn't thought about it in years. Not because it didn't matter, but because no one ever asked if it had. And yet, someone had remembered. Elijah's voice was soft but steady. That day, you didn't wait for permission. You acted. You made sure one kid didn't disappear. We've been tracking that case ever since. It helped shape new policy. You should know that. I couldn't breathe. My hands were trembling. For so long, I had been treated like my work was a hobby, like caring was weak, like compassion didn't count unless it came with a paycheck. But now, here I was being honored, not despite my defiance, but because of it. Elijah's voice didn't rush. He let the silence stretch like he knew I needed a second to breathe. Then he said it. You were invited because you always chose others, even when it cost you everything. I covered my mouth. The tears came without warning, hot, aching years in the making. Not because someone praised me, not because I was being seen, but because this time I wasn't performing goodness for approval. This time, someone saw the sacrifice and still believed it mattered. Elijah continued gently. There will be a seat reserved for you at the Unity dinner. No cameras, no speeches required. Just come as yourself. That's all we ask. I whispered, "Thank you," barely loud enough for the phone to catch. When the call ended, I sat in the stillness of my apartment, hands shaking around the edges of my coffee mug. My family had deleted me from their table, but the nation had saved me a seat at its highest one. I didn't own gowns. I wasn't the kind of woman who attended galas or rubbed elbows with senators. But I had one dress, deep sapphire blue, with a tiny tear at the hem I stitched myself the night before. It was enough. When I stepped into the east room of the White House, everything shimmered. Golden chandeliers, marble floors, music so delicate it felt like air. My heels clicked too loud. My breath came too fast. Then I saw the table, dozens of polished name cards, and there Vanessa Concaid, 2 seats away from the First Lady of the United States. I stood there frozen. Not with pride, not with nerves, but with grief. Grief for the girl who had once begged her own mother to notice her, and now the nation had noticed. As I took my seat, I felt the sting of irony bite deep. The only time I was worthy of a place at a grand table was when my own family had no hand in setting it. Hundreds of miles away, in a mansion wrapped in fairy lights and ego, the Concaid family had just finished pouring champagne. Savannah, always glued to her phone, saw the CNN notification first. Live White House Unity Dinner, Unsung American Heroes. She clicked. The TV flickered on. There I was, lit by warm camera lights, seated 2 chairs from the First Lady, smiling. The room fell silent. My mother dropped her glass. It shattered on the hardwood. She clutched her pearls, her actual pearls, and fainted, collapsing into the cream-colored couch. Bradley didn't move, didn't say a word. He just walked to the TV and turned it off. The glasses clinked all around me, crystal, delicate, full of meaning. I stood slowly, not for a speech, not for applause, just to raise my glass. A camera panned toward me. I felt the weight of the room, the weight of every eye watching. I could have said something bitter, something cutting, something that would sting if it ever reached a living room in Massachusetts, but I didn't. I looked into the golden liquid and whispered to myself, "This isn't for revenge." And then, louder, steady, clear, "To freedom." Some people clapped, some smiled, but one of the women across the table, an immigration lawyer from Texas, teared up quietly. Because she knew, freedom isn't about borders. Sometimes it's about finally being free from the weight of being unseen by those who should have known you best. It started with a headline, subtle, slick, designed to sow just enough doubt. Humanitarian hero or PR construct? I clicked. I shouldn't have. The article didn't outright accuse me of lying. That would have been too obvious, too easy to disprove. Instead, it whispered. Sources close to the case suggest that Vanessa Concaid's role at the border was more administrative than active. Multiple witnesses recall her serving as a translator, not as a key decision-maker. Her sudden rise to national attention has some questioning whether her story was strategically curated. Curated, like a brand, like I was a campaign instead of a person. My throat tightened. My hands went cold. I had worked for years in shelters, in refugee tents, in cramped offices under flickering lights, and now I was being reduced to a headline with a question mark? The first email was sent at 6:42 a.m. Subject: Urgent concerns. Vanessa Concaid's use of community funds. It was anonymous, but not vague. It listed specific dates, projects, and dollar amounts tied to my name, implying fraud, mismanagement, even manipulation. Within 48 hours, 2 major donors pulled out. 1 press release, 1 sentence. We've chosen to pause our support until further clarity is reached. My inbox exploded, not with support, with suspicion. One message from a board member read, "We've always admired your passion, Vanessa, but this isn't just bad optics, it's liability." I stared at the screen, numb. I didn't know what hurt more, the false accusation or the fact that people were so ready to believe it. Lies, when delivered in just the right tone, feel like facts, especially when whispered from behind a familiar curtain. "I wasn't snooping," Marcus said, voice low. I traced the origin of the anonymous email. My heart was already pounding. And I asked. He hesitated, then delivered the blow. It came from a corporate server under Concaid Holdings, Boston division. I went still. Boston was Bradley's territory. "You mean," I double-checked, "the timestamp matches his login credentials. There's no doubt." I sat down slowly, like the room had shifted beneath me. I knew my brother didn't understand me. I knew he didn't respect my work. But this wasn't silence. This was a knife. My own brother had tried to destroy the community I built, not because he truly believed I was a fraud, but because my existence threatened his image. My family didn't just reject my love, they invested in my destruction. The James S. Brady press briefing room felt colder than I imagined. Not hostile, just sacred, like a church built for facts. There was no dramatic music, no dramatic entrance, just me. A woman accused, misrepresented, erased, stepping behind a podium with nothing in her hands but the truth. I didn't bring lawyers. I didn't bring spin doctors. I brought a folder. Inside, handwritten letters from refugee nurses, scanned documents from shelters in El Paso, photos of me translating asylum applications under lantern light. I looked up. The room was full. Cameras, journalists, silence. I took a breath. "I'm not here to defend myself," I said. "I'm here to recount what happened, with evidence, with witnesses, and with heart. No trembling, no theatrics, just truth finally spoken where it could no longer be ignored." A journalist raised her hand mid-briefing. "We've just received word that someone would like to join this conference remotely." I blinked. The screen behind me flickered, and there he was, Louis. Not the trembling boy I once shielded with a folder, but a young man now, confident, clear-eyed, wearing a faded college hoodie. "Hi," he said into the microphone. "I wasn't supposed to speak, but I asked if I could." The room stilled. "She didn't help me because of cameras," he said, voice steady. "She helped me because I was scared, because I was a child, because I was human." I felt tears hit the back of my throat. "She stood in front of that van like a wall," Louis continued. "She used her voice when I didn't have one. And everything I've done since the scholarships, the service projects, the life I'm building is because she believed I mattered." A silence followed. Not awkward, sacred. I turned to the screen beside me. Slide 1, a tabloid headline. "Is she just a translator with great timing?" Slide 2, the anonymous source, cross-referenced with employment records. That person hadn't worked with me in 6 years. Slide 3A, a so-called witness statement proven to be copied from a blog post dated before the event it described. I wasn't angry. I was surgical. I dismantled every lie with receipts, dates, and documents, not to prove I was perfect, but to prove I was present. I didn't have a PR team. I had truth. And it was enough. "If I were fabricating this story," I said calmly, "I must be the worst strategist in America because I forgot to include the part where my own family supported me." The room broke into soft, stunned laughter. But it wasn't mockery. It was release. Because in that moment, I wasn't just defending myself. I was dragging a decade of gaslighting into the daylight and setting it on fire. It didn't take long. Less than 48 hours after the press conference, the headlines turned. Concaid Holdings under scrutiny after leaked IP logs. Anonymous tip that targeted Vanessa traced to internal source. Stocks tanked, not dipped, collapsed. Board members scrambled. At 7:13 a.m. on Monday, Bradley Concaid stepped down as CEO, citing personal ethical reflection. Translation, he got caught. By noon, investors pulled out. By 3 p.m., clients severed ties. Concaid Holdings, a company built on prestige and public image, was bleeding reputation faster than any PR firm could patch. Meanwhile, Savannah's carefully curated public profile cracked. Sponsors dropped her campaign. Collaboration contracts evaporated. An old clip of her saying, "People in the family who stay in their lane keep us looking good," went viral. And Lucille, the grand dame of art fundraisers and gala appearances, within days, 3 major charities publicly cut ties. Not for legal reasons, for moral ones. The phone rang just past midnight. Dad's name on the screen. I almost let it ring out. But curiosity, old, bruised, childlike, made me swipe to answer. "Vanessa?" His voice was quiet, unsure. The background noise was a late-night news anchor talking about Concaid Holdings' collapse. He didn't ask how I was. He asked, maybe it's time the family sat down together. I closed my eyes, not out of pain, but out of restraint. I could hear the panic beneath his calm. Not regret, not love, just fear. Reconciliation, I said, doesn't come from public pressure. It comes from remorse. Silence. A long one. Then, click. He hung up. I didn't sue. I didn't expose more. I didn't drag their names through another press cycle. That would have made me like them. Instead, I kept building OpenTable, brick by brick, name by name. The invitations didn't go to CEOs or influencers. They went to a teenager disowned for coming out, an Afghan mother separated from her children at the border, a war veteran whose family ghosted him after his PTSD diagnosis. I set the table for them, not to save them, but to say, you matter, you deserve to sit. Christmas came again. I got a letter, no return address, just one sentence written in shaky cursive. We saw the news. We regret it all. I didn't cry. I placed it under the tree and poured more cider for the kid next to me who was finally laughing for the first time in weeks. There were no chandeliers, no harpist in the corner, just a mismatched string of lights and 72 folding chairs. The room smelled of cinnamon mashed potatoes and the kind of laughter that only comes from people who've been silent too long. The sign at the door read, "No dress code, no questions, just show up." A boy arrived with a skateboard. A woman came in tears holding a photo of her son. Someone brought tamales. Another brought nothing but their name. No one was judged. No one was corrected. No one had to earn their seat. And in the middle of it all, Vanessa refilling cider, wiping down trays, listening more than speaking. One woman whispered to her, "I thought I'd spend today alone, but I found a place." Vanessa smiled, because she did too. She didn't notice him at first. He had grown taller, face more defined, eyes steady. Louis, no longer the terrified little boy at the border, now a young Nan, holding a plate of food, searching the room. When their eyes met, he smiled. Miss Vanessa. She dropped the serving spoon and ran to him. They hugged in the middle of laughter, tamales, and cider. Then softly, he whispered into her shoulder, "You didn't just save me. You taught me how to be someone worth saving." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. She held him tighter, and in that moment, every exile, every headline, every betrayal dissolved into the warmth of that one truth. I used to believe love was something you earned, that if I just did more, helped more, shrunk myself more, then maybe one day I'd be enough. But standing here next to people who were once strangers but now feel like home, I realized something simple. Maybe I was always worthy. They just weren't capable of seeing it. And that's not my failure. That's their limitation. Blood may tie us, but love is who stays when the world turns away. Sometimes the people who share your blood will never learn how to love you, and that's okay, because family isn't just DNA. Family is who pulls up a chair when you've been left standing, who listens when others silence you, who sees you not as a project to fix, but as a person to honor. You don't have to prove your worth to those who refuse to see it. You just have to walk toward those who already do. If this story touched something inside you, if you've ever felt invisible in a room full of people who were supposed to love you, then you're not alone. Hit subscribe to join a growing community where stories like this remind us your pain matters, your truth deserves space, and most of all, you don't have to be perfect to be worth it. You just have to be honest. See you in the next story.